16:30 hours, a Ukrainian MiG-29 moved across Donetsk at just 150 meters, racing toward the Marivka Dam, which had become a major Russian supply. The pilot had stayed hidden by flying deep inside the Dnipro River Valley, using the hills and the terrain's natural dips to shield himself from radar, but in only a few minutes, that cover would end. What the pilot didn't know was that 3 different Russian radar systems had already locked onto him. An S-400's gravestone radar had tagged him at a distance of 38 kilometers. A Tor M2 was tracking him from the south, and a Buk M3 was warming up its systems from the east. Together, they formed enough overlapping missile coverage to turn any aircraft into metal fragments. But the mission couldn't wait. A live drone feed on the pilot's display showed Russian supply trucks using Ukrainian civilians as drivers to cross the dam. If the strike didn't happen now, there would be civilian casualties and the mission would be pointless. The MiG-29 followed the Dnieper River Valley, using the terrain's natural depression to hide from radar. Flying at 880 kilometers per hour, barely skimming the ground, he had one advantage left, which was that as long as he stayed inside the valley, the surrounding hills kept him invisible. But in 8 minutes, that valley would open into flat farmland, what Ukrainian pilots call the shooting gallery, because it turns any aircraft into an easy target. And in the distance, 3 hostile radars were waiting. The pilot held the MiG steady as the terrain rushed beneath him in a blur, and power lines flashed past so quickly that even blinking felt dangerous. At this altitude, flying wasn't calm or controlled. It was pure survival, managed 1 second at a time. Inside the cockpit, his radar warning receiver began lighting up, each new strobe on the circular display showing a different threat scanning him from a new direction. The system didn't show how far the threats were, only where they were pointing from. It felt like hearing someone shout his name, but not knowing whether they were standing right beside him or across the room. He listened carefully to the pulse patterns. The S-400's radar swept over him with slow, heavy pulses that meant it was still in search mode. When 2 pulses came closer together, it meant the radar was getting interested. When the pulses became fast and sharp, it meant the system had everything it needed to fire. Right now, the sound he heard was somewhere between those patterns, close enough to be dangerous, but just far enough that he still had room to react. He stayed low because staying low was the only thing keeping him alive. As he flew, the bomb under his jet, the weapon designed to destroy the dam, continued running its own silent checks, confirming its GPS connection, checking the stability of its guidance system, and verifying that its rocket motor was armed. But all those green indicators meant nothing if he didn't survive the next 8 minutes of this approach. His fuel gauge wasn't reassuring either. He had just enough fuel to complete the attack and make it home. But each hard maneuver, each climb, and each burst of afterburner would burn more fuel than planned. One wrong move, and he would end up walking home or ejecting behind enemy lines. Ahead of him, the river valley began to widen. The protective hills started to fall away on both sides. Soon, nothing remained but open farmland stretching straight toward the dam. Pilots called this next stretch the shooting gallery because once they entered it, every radar and missile system in the area had a clean view of the sky. The moment he crossed the threshold into this open air, everything changed at once. His warning receiver jumped from occasional beeps to a constant, angry tone. The S-400, which had been quietly scanning before, suddenly snapped onto him with a tight, focused beam. Its computer began calculating where he would be in the next few seconds, preparing to fire. In a single moment, he went from being partially hidden to being the #1 target. He now had only 2 choices, either break the radar lock immediately or accept that a missile was already on its way. He chose to break the lock. He rolled the MiG onto its side and pulled a tight knife-edge turn, staying as close to the ground as he dared. The jet shook under the stress of the maneuver, but the rapid shift in direction confused the radar long enough for the lock to disappear. For a brief moment, he blended back into the noise of the earth beneath him. But before he could recover fully, another warning appeared on his display. A Tor M2 had locked on. It was only 8 kilometers away, close enough that if he looked out the canopy, he might actually see the launcher sitting somewhere in the distance. The Tor system made the situation worse because it didn't rely on the missile's onboard seeker. Its ground radar tracked both the aircraft and the missile at the same time, sending constant course updates. That meant he couldn't jam it or trick it. The only way to survive was to escape into the terrain or outrun it. but instead he chose to dive. Trees rushed past so close he could almost feel them brushing the aircraft. As he dropped, his hands moved quickly across the countermeasure switches. First, he released chaff designed for long-range radar, and then a moment later, he released chaff meant for short-range systems. Then he activated the electronic jamming pod. Behind the aircraft, clouds of metallic fibers burst open, spreading out into hundreds of small reflective pieces that created false radar returns. At the same time, the jamming pod produced a fake ghost aircraft signal that slowly drifted away from the real jet. To the Russian radars, this ghost looked stronger, closer, and more stable than the real MiG. However, the operator took the bait and locked onto the decoy instead of the actual jet. For the first time in several minutes, the pilot had a small window of safety, but staying at 50 meters introduced a different threat. One low-hanging power line, one unexpected hill, or a moment's loss of concentration could send him straight into the ground. He knew he couldn't stay this low forever, and now he could see how close he was, as the release point for the bomb was only moments away. The dam was less than a minute ahead. He had one chance, one climb, and one release to make this attack count, and if he mistimed any part of it, he would either miss the target or get shot down. He pushed the throttle forward. The MiG surged ahead, and what happened next would make every radar operator in the area panic. As emergency alarms echoed across the region, Russian officials released statements claiming that all threats had been intercepted and that the situation was under control. But satellite images, drone footage, and the visible collapse of the dam told a very different story. Engineers on the ground quickly realized the scale of the damage. Logistics officers began rewriting supply routes on the spot, and the Russian units downstream were forced to move as water levels rose faster than expected. What had been a stable crossing point for months was now a flooded, broken gap in the landscape, and the impact went far beyond a single strike. Military analysts across Europe and the US noted the same thing, that a Soviet-era jet flying a near-suicidal mission had managed to outsmart an entire network of modern air defense systems designed to stop some of the most advanced aircraft in the world. The message was impossible to ignore. It showed that precision weapons no longer needed expensive aircraft to be effective, and it proved that air defense systems built to stop large targets struggled against fast, low-flying, unpredictable strikes. It also showed that a pilot who understood the landscape and understood his enemy could still change the outcome of a battlefield with one well-timed decision. This strike showed how a skilled pilot, an aircraft, a well-coordinated plan, and a precision weapon can break through even the most layered air defenses, which forces a difficult question for every military. If a mission like this is possible under heavy radar coverage, then what target is truly safe? Make sure you like, comment your thoughts, and turn on the notification bell, as more updates will follow as the conflict continues to evolve.